Good evening. You're watching this special broadcast of the Buck Stops here. We're broadcasting live again from the Keran sector, which has attracted national and international focus on a dramatic day today when the army chief has said that the Pakistan army itself is behind what has been happening in Keran for the last 15 days. Before we take you through the main points of what he said, let's tell you a little bit about where we're standing. We're actually standing at a place called Pharkiyan Gali, and we're actually at the brigade headquarters in this sector. This brigade is actually in charge of the Keran sector. So this is a really important point, an important strategic point in the Keran sector, right outside the brigade headquarters in Pharkiyan Gali in the Keran sector. We're reporting from ground zero. And on the Buck Stops here, today has been a day of dramatic developments. First, the 15-day operation in Keran, the anti-infiltration operation launched by the army that has used more than 500 soldiers for a massive manhunt, has been called to a close today. That announcement came from the Northern Army Commander, the highest ranking army officer in the state. But more crucially, for the first time, officially, directly and bluntly, the Indian Army and the Indian Army's chief has blamed the Pakistan Army, saying that what has happened in Keran, that massive infiltration bid in which 30 to 40 terrorists, maybe more, were able to infiltrate Indian territory, could not have taken place without the knowledge and the support of the Pakistani army. In fact, the army chief has gone on to say that the Pakistan army wants to keep Kashmir simmering. On the program today, we'll be asking whether the Prime Minister's Pakistan policy is now under fire. The opposition has always been saying he should not have met Nawaz Sharif. But when India's own army chief goes on the record to blame the Pakistan army, well, that's extremely serious. And over the next 60 minutes, as we broadcast from ground zero, from Pharkiyan Gali in the Keran sector, we'll be asking where this leaves the India-Pakistan equation. This, of course, is part of our special series. We've been mapping the line of control in several different reports from across the state. We have already traveled hundreds of kilometers, mapping the 776 kilometers of the line of control. And this time our journey has been towards the north of Srinagar, passing Sopore, passing Kupwara, and coming up here to the mountainous, remote, rugged terrain of Pharkiyan Gali at the brigade headquarters here in the Keran sector. All right, let's get started now straight away with today's most important development. Let's start with our newsmaker tonight, the Army Chief of India, General Bikram Singh, directly blaming the Pakistan Army, speaking to me in an exclusive interview earlier. He's our newsmaker tonight. General Bikram Singh, thanks for your time. This is Barkha joining you from Srinagar today. I'd like to start by asking you to share with us your assessment, this very serious statement that is now coming from the army about the backing of the Pakistan army for this massive infiltration bids that have taken place in the Keran sector. Pakistan army's involvement, sir, do we have concrete evidence?
Barkha, this evidence has been there with us for a very, very long time. And I mentioned earlier this morning that no infiltration can take place, no activity by any terrorist can take place along the line of control without the knowledge, the support of Pakistani army. That is for sure. And all of us who operated in that area along the line of control know about it. How is it possible that, you have very close contact with their defenses, you know where they are deployed, and these people are operating over there without being checked by anybody? So there is support being given, and they cannot afford to carry out these operations without the support of the Pakistani army.
General Bikram Singh, this was not a typical infiltration. It was a much larger group, 30 to 40. Did that also raise your suspicions about the involvement of the Pakistan army, the sophisticated weapons, the rations, the night vision devices, 59 weapons recovered? How was this infiltration bit different from all the others that you have seen, sir, in your long career in the army?
I had mentioned about this earlier in January this year, when I was asked a question about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, and I said, we need to wait and watch at least till 2014, and depending on what happens in Afghanistan. There are reports alluding to large number of terrorists having come into this area in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And This definitely is quite an emboldened kind of a stance of the terrorists, definitely large number, which has not been seen hitherto. And I think, as brought out by me earlier, the Army commander alluded to it, that it indeed was a desperate attempt. And I think it was desperate because you will have soon the snow falling and the Shamshabari would get covered. The infiltration is going to become difficult. And therefore, now the time that perhaps they want to push through as many terrorists as possible.
General Singh, when you say that this could not have been possible without the Pakistan Army, given that this is now not just terror groups but also the Pakistan Army involved, what is the option before the Indian Army to counter this?
Look, we are going to preclude, we're going to prevent, not allow this infiltration to occur. There has been an understanding on the line of control. We will maintain sanctity of the line of control. We'll ensure its effective domination, moral ascendancy on the line of control. And we'll ensure that we prevent this kind of activity by the terrorists.
General Singh, can you also share with us the decision to call off the search operations while keeping troops redeployed in that area? Many questions have been raised about the bodies that have been missing. You have since said that 7 of the terrorists killed could have been from the same group. Why the decision to call off the search operations? What finally decided that, sir?
Barkha, you were with the Army commander. I think he was the best judge, the commander on the spot to take the decision, and I respect his decision, which has been taken in the backdrop of the current situation over there and the ground realities.
So last question, the LOC has been hot and volatile the last 2 months. We've seen more than 150 ceasefire violations. The Pakistan Army now fully, in a sense, answerable for what's happening. Are you very worried about the enhanced tensions along the line of control, starting with the killing of 5 of our soldiers in August and really, in a sense, lasting through summer, culminating with this Keran encounter? What is your assessment of the situation here?
Situation, well, definitely it is slightly more, I would say the violence is slightly more, the number of infiltrators coming in is definitely more, and I think we are fully prepared for it. My assessment is that they are going to continue trying this infiltration. Their endeavor would be to pump in as many terrorists as possible for the winters, to keep the situation in Jammu and Kashmir simmering, and with that aim, I presume, and I'm certain that they would continue, infiltration along the line of control and even certain segments of the international border. And that is where our troops are fully geared up, they are prepared, and you heard the Army commander in this regard.
General Bikram Singh, Army Chief, pleasure talking to you, clarifying the position and also saying the Pakistan Army is responsible for what we've seen happening in the Keran sector. General Bikram Singh, thank you once again.
India's Army Chief General Bikram Singh talking to me exclusively earlier in the day in Srinagar. At the moment, we are broadcasting to you live from Parkiyan Gali. We're right outside the brigade headquarters that is in charge of the entire operational area of the Keran sector that has now become a national and an international name because of the 15-day long anti-infiltration operation that we have seen here. Army officials saying that they've never quite recovered such a large cache of weapons in recent times. And yes, this particular infiltration attempt, in which 30 to 40, maybe more, according to one injured soldier I spoke to, terrorists who came in, is not typical of anything that they have seen before recently. The most important statement, of course, coming from the Army Chief and then reinforced by the Northern Army Commander, he's of course the highest ranking Army officer in Jammu and Kashmir, is to blame the Pakistan Army. In fact, the Northern Army Commander making the announcement in Srinagar that the search operations were now being called to a close after more than 500 soldiers, including para-commandos, had combed every inch of a 3-kilometer radius. The most important statement that came from him was him saying, it would be ridiculous, that's the word he used, it would be ridiculous to think the Pakistan Army did not have a lot to do with what has happened in Keran. Here's our ground report from the Keran sector.
We've carried out a number of searches in that area. 6 to 7 of them in that particular area and in the adjacent area. I have now given directions to call off the concerted search. But our counter-infiltration deployment is being strengthened. We are now going to be launching operations which are intelligence-based, which are surveillance-based, and which are specific so that we can eliminate and meet up to the challenges that are existing.
15 days after one of the largest ever infiltration bids along the line of control, one that hurled this remote, rugged, mountainous region of Keran into national and international focus, the state's highest-ranking army officer has announced that he will be pulling back his men from combing every inch of a 3-kilometer radius around the deserted village of Shalabatu. The thick jungle cover, steep mountain incline and unsparing rocky terrain had made the soldiers' challenge Herculean. More than 500 army men, including Special Forces para-commandos, had been part of the massive manhunt. These dramatic images of terrorists killed in what the army is calling a desperate infiltration attempt at multiple points show how the fight to stop them has been taking place right at the fence of the line of control, and in some cases even ahead of it. The army says these men may well have been part of the original group of 30 to 40 infiltrators who intruded the Keran sector 2 weeks ago. But questions persist about the missing bodies of the 12 terrorists the army says were killed in the very first strike.
These infiltration bids, I told you, multiple. Some of them may have been dragged back. We have searched the entire area. Some of them have been used to do the other subsequent operations. जो अभी 2 दिन उसके बाद हुआ है, फिर 2 दिन के बाद फिर हुआ है.
The haul of weapons is being described as one of the largest ever recovered in recent times. These 59 weapons include rocket launchers, night vision devices, under-barrel grenade launchers, pistols that the army says are made in Pakistan, and mountain-high stacks of rotis and rations that would have reinforced the intruders for up to 30 days. None of this, says the state's army commander, would have been possible without the active backing of the Pakistan army.
For a large group of terrorists like this infiltrating, you mean to say it can be without the complicity of the Pakistan army? I mean, this is ridiculous.
That this was not a typical or routine infiltration was first evident in the eyewitness testimonies of these injured soldiers, who so movingly spoke of wanting to be back at the line of action, though their injuries may never allow them to be infantrymen again. ये जो infiltration हुई केरन सेक्टर में, आपने क्या देखा, आप बताइए हमें।
वहाँ पे मैडम बहुत सारे मिलिटेंट्स थे मैडम।
बहुत सारे मिलिटेंट थे।
मतलब 30-35 की नफरी में थे उन लोग।
आपने खुद देखा? खुद
देखा मैडम।
आपने खुद देखा कि 30-35 के बीच में थे?
उससे ज्यादा ही था मैडम, कम नहीं था।
अच्छा। और आपने देखा, आप अपनी पेट्रोलिंग ड्यूटी कर रहे थे?
नहीं, एम्बुश कर रहे थे मैडम।
आप एम्बुश में थे? अच्छा। फिर क्या हुआ? तो फायरिंग आई?
हमने फायरिंग किया हुआ, आपस में मुठभेड़ हुआ मैडम, तभी मुझे यहाँ पे गोली लग गया।
आपको गोली यहाँ पे लगी?
हाँ जी।
और किस तरह की फायरिंग थी? भारी फायरिंग, भारी गोलाबारी?
भारी गोलाबारी।
Here in the Keran sector, after 15 long, intense, tough days, the army has closed its search operations. The stoicism and the valor of the injured soldiers is the human dimension of this story. But in terms of strategic affairs, now that the Indian army has directly and officially blamed the Pakistan army, the India-Pakistan equation comes under an even larger cloud than before, with no less than the army chief saying that what has happened in Keran has the stamp of the Pakistan army. The stakes are now high for Manmohan Singh's Pakistan policy, and there will be even more questions raised around it than before. Here in the Keran sector, with Manoj Thakur, Zafar Iqbal and Shurbani Bhattacharya, Barkhadat for NDTV. All right, let's go across now to my colleague Zafar Iqbal. One of the questions that's been asked and perhaps will be answered over the next few days is what has happened to all the terrorists who came in? Were they driven back? How many bodies were taken back across the line of control? And did those who managed to come in fan out to other areas? Even the army believes that is possible because they say the 7 terrorists killed, and we've seen those dramatic images of those bodies in subsequent infiltration bids, may have been part of the same original group. Let's go across to Zafar now. Zafar, what are you hearing from your sources? These terrorists, the 30 to 40 men who came in, could they have now fanned out to other areas?
Well, Barkha Army has foiled multiple infiltration bids in the Keran sector over the last few days. In fact, one infiltration attempt was foiled just last night in the neighboring sectors. But our sources are indicating to us that there is a big possibility that a large number of militants could have in fact successfully managed to infiltrate and spread themselves in the Kupwara district. Just at the time when army was busy in its operations in the Keran sector, militants could have possibly taken advantage of that situation. Now, clearly the challenge before the army is twofold. One is to stop the infiltrators from crossing at the line of control, and the second is to track them down in the hinterland. Militants would obviously try and make desperate attempts for infiltration just before the winter sets in and snow blocks the passes.
All right, Zafar Iqbal, thanks so much for bringing us up to speed. We're broadcasting tonight live from the Keran sector. It's a freezing night here at Harkiyan Gully. We're right outside the brigade headquarters, the brigade that is in fact charge of the entire Keran sector. Questions now being asked after the army chief's very, very blunt statement blaming directly, officially and with no words minced at all the Pakistan army for what we've seen unfold in the last 15 days in Keran. This raises questions about Manmohan Singh's Pakistan policy, even more questions than before. Was that meeting in New York meaningless? The only thing that came out of the meeting was a decision, ironically, for the Director Generals of Military Operations to meet on the tension along the line of control. Will they still meet, and will their meeting have any meaning at all? Did Manmohan Singh make a grave mistake meeting Nawaz Sharif when this operation was already in the middle of unfolding on this enormous scale that we have seen for the last 15 days? Let's introduce our guests on the buck stops here tonight as we broadcast live from the Keran sector. Shashi Tharoor is joining us. He's, of course, a minister in Manmohan Singh's government. Also joining us, Ravi Shankar Prasad, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, BJP Leader in the Rajya Sabha. Also joining us, General Shankar Prasad, somebody who knows this state very well and has also served as its Director General Infantry. From Karachi today, the perspective from Pakistan, Air Vice Marshal Abid Rao will also be taking part in this discussion. And G. Parthasarthi, well-known diplomat and somebody who served as the High Commissioner to Pakistan, India's High Commissioner to Pakistan, also joining us. Shashi Tharoor, let me start by asking you, you've heard what the Army Chief said in an interview to me. He's also given the same interview to others in my fraternity. His words are pulling no punches. He's blaming the Pakistan Army on record. Where does that leave that meeting, that ill-fated meeting, some would say, between Nawaz Sharif and Manmohan Singh?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that we make judgments about meetings when we look at the circumstances and the facts available at the time. And certainly there's no question that it's not a mistake to pursue peace with your neighbors. The Prime Minister has explained very clearly to the nation why it was necessary, and I think that the pursuit of peace is never something to be ashamed of. Having said that, let me add my own words of admiration and support for the excellent work the Army is doing on the ground, the brave soldiers, their stoicism, their fortitude, the injuries they've had to suffer. These are all things which the nation as a whole feels, and the entire nation stands behind the Army. It was also good to hear the Army Chief tell you that the Army is ready, because the government has always said that preserving the sanctity of the line of control is the most important thing, and for us we don't do that only through diplomacy, we do it through a ready, capable, efficient army, and that's exactly what we have on the ground. Now, on the larger question of talks with Pakistan, the talks took place in New York when they did, and certainly there will have to be follow-up to some of these discussions.
All right, Ravi Shankar Prasad, you've heard the minister. There is a defense still coming of the decision to talk. The government keeps asking what option is there to talk, but to talk. And I would say that Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the prime example of that policy when the NDA was in power. When you say that the two prime ministers should not speak, what do you expect the government to do instead? And how serious has the situation turned now that no less than the army chief has said to me in an interview that the Pakistan army is responsible for what is unfolding here in the Keran sector? Ravi.
Barkha, I have heard carefully what the army chief has told you today on your channel. Each word I have heard. I salute the army chief for the very frank talk he has done for the sake of India. I also salute all the brave Jawans. But let me ask a more important question. All this massive planning for the biggest infiltration of recent time, which led to such a massive catch of arms and weapons there, must have been in planning with the patronage and facilitation of the armed forces of Pakistan when Dr. Manmohan Singh was going to meet the Prime Minister of Pakistan. That is the most crucial thing. Barkha, you must understand, not having a meeting at the summit level is also a part of diplomacy. Mr. Bajpayee ensured that Agra fails. You were present there when Mr. Musharraf failed to acknowledge the scourge of terrorism. And when he signed the agreement of January 4, 2004, that they will not permit Pakistani soil to be used for terrorism against India, only then we could resume the talk. Here, Pakistan is not living up to that. And here's a classic case with Nawaz Sharif in the election campaign telling you, I want peace. He goes with the message of peace to New York, and he has no control over his armed forces who are facilitating one of the biggest infiltration. Therefore, right from Sharm el-Sheikh, the shame of Sharm el-Sheikh, where you disengage terrorism, and that is what's happening. I'm sorry, Dr. Manmohan Singh's engagement with Nawaz Sharif was not only counterproductive, was a very wrong message as far as Indian diplomatic initiative is concerned. That's our take. And Dr. Manmohan Singh, I would request you to own up your mistake at least and ensure corrective measures in the light of very frank comment of the Indian Army Chief.